All right, here we go. So now we have teams 9 through 1 in our Big Ten power rankings. And then in this week, too, we had at least four meaningful games that really kind of set a little bit more barometer for how good these teams are and where they sit. And that really shook a lot of things up in our rankings and shuffled a lot in our top 9. So stay tuned to see who's number 1 and stay tuned to see where your team lands this week. Okay, starting off at number 9 in our part 2 of our power rankings, I have the Washington Huskies. And the Washington Huskies, they won their game 70-10. I caught probably the first half of this game. I was very impressed by the offense. I think they probably have one of the top 5 or 6 offenses in the league. The one thing that might be holding them back is their defense, because they gave up, I believe, more than 20 points in last game against Colorado State. I believe they played Colorado State last week. But Colorado State could be a pretty good team. A lot of people project them as being a good team this year within their conference. So we'll see how Washington's defense does against Big Ten competition. But there's really not much to say about Washington right now. They just won their game as handily as they should, and therefore there's no new issues that have shown themselves in this game because very little resistance. So right now, I have Washington at 9, and I think it's really their offense and Jed Fish as a coach. I believe in Jed Fish as a coach, putting them ahead, kind of right in the middle of the pack right now, and ahead of some of their contemporaries like Minnesota and Nebraska. All right, at number 8, I have the Iowa Hawkeyes. As I said last week, you can count on Iowa to look the same now every season as long as Kirk Ferentz is there. Good elite defense with poor to terrible offense, and this season is no different. In fact, their games against Iowa State, such as this past Saturday, was the same lower scoring 3 points or less decided game as every other season since Matt Campbell took over the Cyclones. Iowa State has pretty good to good offense each year and decent defense, matching up with Iowa's good to elite defense to go with Iowa's poor offense, which creates these low-scoring games. I'll just keep Iowa at number 8 the same way I would keep Iowa between 4 and 6 all the time before the new expansion happened last season. So under the new expansion, they'll never be higher than 6 nor lower than 10 as long as Kirk Ferentz is there. Okay, dropping down to number 7 from number 5 from last week, I have the Michigan Wolverines. I have had many different reactions to this game after the game since Saturday as a Michigan fan. And many Michigan fans are trying to figure out whom to blame after basically getting punked and pushed around, to put it lightly, by Oklahoma. Lots of people are totally taking the blame off of Bryce Underwood and blaming it completely on the offensive line. Others are blaming the coaches, and others are putting a little bit on Bryce being a freshman. But mostly people are attributing it to a combination of these glaring issues. Mostly there are overreactions and lots of our season is doomed takes. After a few days of letting things sink in and doing a sobering analysis, I really believe what us Michigan fans all secretly knew but couldn't admit going into the season is that the O-line is what was going to hold us back this year. It's really, there's a lot of pieces. There's a ton of pieces, and a lot of pieces, those pieces are freshmen. And the personnel right now really on the offensive line is just not good enough with what they have out there as starters. They were thrown around by Oklahoma, like literally, both sides of the trenches. They just got out physical. And that's not getting into all the missed blocking assignments either, where they whiffed. There's just whiffs everywhere, and especially on pin and pulls. It was just bad, just really bad. Grant Newsome, who's the O-line coach, has never coached anything at any position before becoming the O-line coach there at Michigan. And he's just over his head and not cut out for the job right now at this point in his career. And that is on Sharon Moore for that hire. It was a really bad hire. And I don't believe Sharon Moore appears to be on the same page with Chip Lindsey. There's no identity on offense or anything that is good that they can build off of, other than Bryce being a freak of nature and Justice Haynes being a great running back. Their receivers are just mediocre. As a group, they're mediocre. I think McCauley is pretty good. He's above average. He's not elite or anything like that. But they don't utilize Bryce's skills and ability. The smash is not working with the personnel they have on the O-line. So handcuffing Chip Lindsey and Bryce while coaching scared is just not going to cut it. They need to compensate to a team that loads the box by letting Bryce carry more of the load and exploit teams for doing that, like Oklahoma did. Like Oklahoma was totally not afraid of the passing game, and they just loaded the box. And the only thing that worked in the running game when they loaded the box was Jumbo, but they didn't stick with that. Defensively, they're okay, but not elite. I think they did a formidable job holding Oklahoma to 24 points, even though Oklahoma shot themselves in the foot. Nonetheless, given the offense was off the field so quickly, they did a decent job of keeping them in the game, frankly, with a chance in the fourth quarter. So I do think there are tackling issues that there were at the beginning of last year that is discouraging, but they are also really tired late in the game. So Michigan is dropping and are not near a top-tier team this season, and will be lucky to get that fourth at-large college football spot in the Big Ten. Okay, because Michigan has its issues right now, by default, I'm moving Indiana up to number 6 from number 7. And I did not catch their game against, I believe, Kennesaw. I don't know, never heard of that team. Obviously a big cupcake, but they won 56-9, which is a healthy enough spread to where you can't really drop them, and there appears not to be any glaring issues to do so. I think they're still a team that's not a high tier 2 level team. I don't think they're going to be really competing for that 4th spot in the Big Ten. But we'll see how they do against Illinois. That game against Illinois will be quite a barometer for both teams, I think. I think Indiana's still undersized up front, and they're still a few recruiting classes away, perhaps, from getting that piece of their team together to where they can be where they want to go. But I think there's a little bit of a drop-off this year from what I saw in the first game. But we'll see where they are. We'll see what they do against Illinois, and that's all the analysis that can be really done right now for Indiana. So Indiana at number 6. Okay, at number 5, I have the Illinois Fighting Illini. Now, it's understandable that Illinois is moving up in the rankings and is a favorite right now to become the number 4 team in the Big Ten. And they earned it on the field with a defining win over the Duke Blue Devils. But this is a power ranking, not a resume ranking. I'm looking at the overall strengths and weaknesses of the team and how well they would do if they played everybody. And frankly, they got dominated, mostly in the trenches on both sides of the ball by Duke. Really, the difference was the resolve of Illinois and to not make as many mistakes as Duke turned over the ball several times. Bielema and his staff also outcoached Duke and made the necessary adjustments. And that I give them credit to, because the coaches really know their strengths and know what their limits are, and therefore know what their identity is. And that is mostly in their quarterback, Altmaier, and the elite passing game and their secondary. Once Duke turned the ball over and the field was flipped and Illinois took the lead, they were able to enforce their style of play over Duke's. And it made Duke play from behind and abandon the run where they had an advantage. So putting things into context, I do not think Illinois is the fourth best team right now, because against the top four, their passing offense alone will not do it. Elite trench play is important if you want to be invited to the big boys table in the Big Ten. And speaking of which, I think our number 4 best team would beat Illinois. And they do have a matchup in the Big Ten this season. And that'll be an interesting game. So, speaking of which, at number 4, the team that I think will beat Illinois this season in their Big Ten matchup, is the USC Trojans at number 4. And I think they're just very similar in identity to Illinois, but the difference is they have a lot more talent up and down their roster than Illinois does. And they have a lot more weapons on offense than Illinois does. And they had another big blowout win against another cupcake opponent this week. But they look impressive. When you watch them, nothing stands out. Just like last week, nothing stands out as having any weaknesses. They just look dominant everywhere against these past 2 opponents. So really, their only question is the same as Illinois, and that is, how are they in the trenches? The Duke game, to me, revealed Illinois in the trenches. We haven't really seen USC tested yet. And I don't think they will be really tested until Big Ten play. So until then, that's going to be a question mark for them. But they do have the number 1 offense in college football by statistics. I think that's based on yardage and yards per play. So I think they will beat Illinois just because they just have more firepower. But it'll be a fun matchup when that game comes. Okay, so now we are getting into the very top tier of the Big Ten. These 3 teams, these are the top 3. These 3 teams are all pretty much predetermined that they're going to make the college football playoffs, for sure. It's pretty much predetermined destiny that these teams are. It's just a given. At number 3, I have the Penn State Nittany Lions. And last week I had them at number 1 because just the eye test. I just think they were going into the season the most complete team now that they've added some wide receivers to their offense, and I thought that was the missing piece against Oregon in the championship last year. In the Big Ten championship was really a passing game beyond just throwing the ball to their tight end Warren as their safety blanket. And I liked the way Aller looked in the first game. So it gave me pretty good reason to rank them at number 1 because they just looked like the most complete team. Physically up front, they're really physical. I think they have the best offensive line, at least run blocking offensive line in the league, maybe in college football. Of course, their defense, it's led by Jim Knowles. Their defense is probably a top 5 defense in the country. They just seem to have everything. They have the best running back room. And Drew Aller is a dual threat quarterback that can run. So I think they're built best in the Big Ten probably to win it all, like on paper. But I'd have to say this week, not too impressed with Drew Aller. To be quite honest, I never really understood all the hype around him. I know like he's talented, he's athletic, and he was a 5-star quarterback. And he hasn't had very many people to throw it to. So far, they're airing the ball out a lot more aggressively with him, which is good, which is what they need to do. But he threw the ball 33 times and completed 19 of 33, which is below 60%. And for 200 yards, that's basically 6.7 yards per pass. So, and you had the fact that they only won 34-0 to FIU. There's not much to say. Like, if you want to be the best team, if you want me to put you at number 1, and you want to compete for a national championship also, I think you should be able to beat FIU by more than 34-0. So right now I just have them at number 3. I dropped them down. Okay, so staying at the same spot as last week at number 2, I have the Ohio State Buckeyes. And a lot of people think they're the best team in the Big Ten because they beat Texas and they just walloped Grambling State. Well, it's Grambling State, and I believe they are an FCS team. They gave them no resistance. And because I had them at number 2 last week, because I think Archie Manning laid an egg in that game, and their defense, Ohio State's defense is elite. I mean, really elite. I just think if there's one thing it's not a weakness, but not an elite part of their game, of their team, is their run defense. I thought Texas did a pretty good job last week of running the ball against them, while Ohio State was well aware that they were not able to throw against their secondary and stretch out their defense to make their defense more honest. Texas was still able to run the ball on them. So this week, you can't really gauge, how good they are, how good Julian Sayin is, if he's really improved that much from first to second week, because there's just no resistance in this game, frankly. The first 2 touchdowns, one was a throw to a tight end that was wide open, and it wasn't a fancy play or anything. He just ran. It was a play action, and that made the linebackers move up a little bit. Then the tight end, who was not a fast tight end, he's just kind of a big lumbering tight end, ran past the linebackers, and he was wide open, and he ran to the end zone. And all the other defensive backs were covering all Ohio State's receivers because you need all the resources you can to cover them. So, and then their second touchdown was it looked like a defensive breakdown where Jeremiah Smith, they lost Jeremiah Smith. I don't know how I can understand how he can run past you, but it looks like they lost him, like they forgot he was out there or something. So it's Grambling State, no resistance. There's nothing you can really gauge from this game. So I really don't feel like I have any other choice than to leave them at number 2. All right, at number 1, finishing up in our power rankings for week 2, I have the Oregon Ducks. Yep, that's right. And this wasn't super difficult for me just because of who they played. They're the only one within the top tier 3 teams that actually played a Power 5 opponent this week. And what Ohio State did to Grambling State, who's an FCS team, Oregon did that to a Power 5 team. Granted, a Power 5 team that's not what it used to be, and it's probably going to finish towards the lower end of the Big 12 this season. But this is a team that has the potential to give resistance. And the fact that they didn't give any resistance is not because they're not capable of giving resistance, it's just that because Oregon just appears to be that damn good. And it's a Mike Gundy team that's going to be pretty well coached, and they're going to play pretty fundamentally well. And going to before the game, I thought it was pretty funny, the passive-aggressive comments that Mike Gundy took, a little pot shot at Oregon, saying, well, the reason why we're not good is because we don't spend money like they do. And he said it in a very passive-aggressive way. And then, of course, Dan Lanning shot back, had a perfect response to him. And Mike Gundy's, basically backpedaled, after that. But I think that lit a torch, lit something under Dan Lanning, and he just was pretty determined to, I think, make an example out of Oklahoma State because of that. But I was really just, going to Oregon, I was just really thoroughly impressed with, literally everything. Their defensive penetration, their defensive pass rush might be the best in college football, possibly the best. And their offensive line is incredible. They might have, I think, only second to Penn State maybe in offensive line play. But they can do everything. They can play power football. They can run the ball. Their blocking is so clean, and it's so elite. Their passing game is elite. The run game is elite. Their pass protection is elite. Their play calling is super creative. They literally mix everything in there. There's nothing they can't do on offense. There's no adjustment that they couldn't make based on what a defense throws to him, because they can make Dante Moore can really make all the throws. He has the long ball. There's receivers that create separation down the field. There's an intermediate game, and there's just everything. There's plays, there's screen plays, there's plays in the flat, there's bubble screens. They do everything. They do reverse plays. It's not a vanilla offense. It's creative. It's everything they do is well executed and it's versatile. Their defense is solid. Their defense is really good, probably elite overall. Although I can't tell how good their secondary is because Oklahoma State's quarterback was pretty bad. He was harassed all game by that defensive line. If there was anything where I could just find where it's like, oh, maybe this might be an issue for them winning a national championship per se, or winning the Big Ten championship in Indianapolis, is that based on what I saw last year against Penn State in the run defense, they got a little exposed in that game. Even though they won that game, they got a little exposed in the run defense. So they could, but then again, it's a new season. And we'll see. We'll find out against Penn State this year how good their defensive line is. And we'll see how good their secondary is against Ohio State's wide receivers and Jeremiah Smith. If they were to play each other in the Big Ten championship, that is. They don't play each other in the regular season. But I think this game against Penn State this year is going to be a good barometer for both teams.